The biggest lie you were told about Stoicism. You've probably heard someone say, just be a Stoic about it. Usually that means be a rock, be strong, and whatever you do, don't show any emotion. But what if I told you that this idea, the emotionless Stoic, is a complete and total lie? What if it's a misunderstanding that's actually preventing you from becoming mentally stronger? Today we're going to bust that myth wide open and reveal what Stoicism really teaches about your emotions. It's not about losing them. It's about using them to build a life that's not only more resilient, but a whole lot happier. The image of the stone-faced Stoic, unmoved by chaos and empty of emotion, is the biggest lie you've been sold about mental strength. And honestly, this lie is holding you back. You picture a statue in a storm, impassive, unbreakable, and cold. You've been told to man up, to be a rock, an unfeeling fortress against the chaos of life. Social media is wallpapered with pictures of rugged-looking dudes next to Stoic quotes, pushing this idea of a hardened, emotionless warrior. Even the dictionary defines a Stoic as someone who endures pain without showing feeling. This caricature is everywhere, and it's not just wrong, it's dangerous. It's a ghost haunting our idea of strength, setting an impossible standard that has nothing to do with the deep, life-affirming wisdom of the ancient Stoics. The agitation, the problem with the lie. So why is this lie so bad for you? Who cares if we get an old philosophy wrong? Well, it matters because this misunderstanding doesn't lead to strength. It leads to suppression. And suppressing your emotions isn't mastery. It's just putting yourself in a cage. When you believe being Stoic means being emotionless, you basically declare war on your own nature. You're human, and being human means you feel things. You're going to feel anger, sadness, anxiety, and joy. There's no getting around it. But if your goal is to feel nothing, then every time an emotion pops up, you see it as a failure. You get angry, and then you get angry at yourself for being angry. You feel anxious, and then you feel ashamed of your anxiety. It's a nasty cycle that doesn't build resilience. It builds self-loathing. You're trying to fight your stress, which only winds you up even more. This constant battle is exhausting. Trying to bottle everything up never works long-term. Emotions are signals, messengers from your inner world. Anger might be telling you a boundary has been crossed. Sadness might be telling you you've lost something you cared about. To suppress these emotions is like shooting the messenger before you even get the message. You keep yourself in the dark about what's really going on inside, and the root problems just fester. That's not strength. It's choosing to be ignorant, and that leaves you vulnerable. Modern psychology actually backs this up. The core ideas of cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT, which many see as a modern version of Stoicism, aren't about erasing feelings. They're about understanding the thoughts that lead to our feelings and then working with those thoughts. Suppression, on the other hand, is just avoidance. It's like trying to hold a beach ball underwater. You might manage it for a little while, but it takes a ton of energy, and eventually that ball is going to shoot to the surface, probably with more force than it had before. Plus, this lie of the emotionless Stoic cuts you off from other people. Real connection is built on honesty and being able to share your vulnerabilities. If you're always wearing a mask of indifference, you're not letting anyone get close to you. You become a fortress, sure, but fortresses are lonely places. In your attempt to look strong, you might just come off as cold and distant, which is the exact opposite of the true Stoic ideal of community and social duty. This impossible standard of emotionlessness just sets you up to feel like a failure. You can't achieve it because you're not a machine. So you end up feeling weak and undisciplined, all because you were chasing a myth. The lie tells you that your emotions are the enemy. The truth is, your unexamined judgments are the problem, and your emotions are just the alarm system trying to get your attention. The revelation, the truth of Stoicism. So, if Stoicism isn't about crushing your emotions, what is it really about? This is where we get to the good stuff. The great Stoics weren't emotionless. They were emotional masters. They didn't want to get rid of their feelings. They wanted to understand and guide them with reason. The whole mix-up comes from one Greek word, apatheia. To us, that sounds like apathy, which means not caring. But in the original Greek, apatheia means something way more powerful: freedom from being disturbed, a state of inner calm and tranquility. It's not about feeling nothing. It's about not being yanked around by destructive, irrational emotions. The Stoics split the world into two simple categories: things you can control and things you can't. What can you control? Your thoughts, your judgments, your actions, and your own character. What can't you control? Pretty much everything else. The weather, the economy, what other people think, your health, your reputation. The whole practice of Stoicism is about putting 100% of your energy into what you can control and learning to accept the rest with grace. So how does this relate to emotions? The Stoics knew that our first knee-jerk reactions, what the philosopher Seneca called first movements, are mostly out of our hands. If someone cuts you off in traffic, you'll feel a flash of anger. That's a natural physical response. A Stoic doesn't try to stop that initial feeling. That would be like trying to stop it from raining. The real work of Stoicism happens in the moment after that first flash. This is the most famous idea in all of Stoicism, from the legendary teacher Epictetus, who was born a slave. It's not things that upset us, but our judgments about them. Let's unpack that. Getting cut off in traffic isn't inherently terrible. It's just a car changing lanes. It's the judgment, "This is ruining my day, that guy is an idiot," that creates the real suffering. The Stoic practice is to pause and look at the judgment that's pouring fuel on the fire. You ask yourself, is this judgment actually true? Is it helpful? Is this really a catastrophe or just an inconvenience? The goal isn't to lie to yourself and pretend everything's great. It's to see things clearly, without the drama of unchecked emotions. Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor, didn't write in his private journal Meditations about being an unfeeling robot. That journal is full of him wrestling with his own frustrations and reminding himself to be more rational and compassionate. He wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." That's the core of Stoic emotional wisdom. It's not about being numb, it's about being clear. This mindset leads to incredible freedom. When you realize your inner peace doesn't depend on things going your way, you become truly resilient. The Stoics believed in challenging our own false judgments, but they also believed in cultivating good feelings, like joy and goodwill, which come naturally from a life of reason and virtue. Stoicism isn't a philosophy of misery. It's a path to a deep and lasting joy that comes from within. The solution and the how-to. Okay, theory is great, but Stoicism is meant to be lived. So how do we actually go from the myth of suppressing emotions to the reality of mastering them? By using the same mental tools the Stoics practiced for centuries. First, practice the dichotomy of control. This is your foundation. Every day when you face a problem, consciously ask yourself, what part of this can I control, and what part is out of my hands? Let's say you've got a huge presentation at work. What can't you control? The projector failing, your boss being in a sour mood, a coworker asking a question you didn't see coming. Worrying about that stuff is a waste of energy. What can you control? How well you prepare. The hours you put into research, practicing your delivery, your attitude when you walk in. How do you respond if things go sideways? Stoicism teaches you to pour all your effort into what you control and accept the rest. This simple shift takes you from passive anxiety to active empowerment. Second, reframe emotions as messengers. Instead of seeing your emotions as enemies, think of them as messengers. Someone who believes the lie tries to shoot the messenger. They feel anger and try to kill it. A wise person, a true Stoic, listens to the message. When you feel a powerful emotion, just pause. Don't react. Get curious. If you feel anxious, ask, what am I afraid of here? What does my mind think is at risk? If you feel angry, ask, what rule of mine just got broken? Is that rule even reasonable? This is a form of cognitive distancing. You learn to observe your feelings instead of being consumed by them. You are not your anger. You are the one noticing the anger. That little bit of space gives you the power to choose a rational response. Third, practice negative visualization, premeditatio malorum. This sounds grim, but it's one of the most powerful Stoic tools for building resilience and gratitude. Premeditatio malorum means the premeditation of evils. It's not about dwelling on the negative. It's about calmly thinking about what could go wrong. You might briefly imagine losing your job or your health. As Seneca said, everything we have is just on loan from fortune. The point isn't to create anxiety, but to do the opposite. First, it prepares you. By mentally rehearsing tough times, you reduce the shock if they ever happen. It's like a fire drill for your soul. Second, and more importantly, it makes you incredibly grateful for what you have right now. When you contemplate life without a good friend, you treat them with more kindness today. This practice doesn't make you gloomy. It makes life more vivid. Fourth, journal for clarity. Marcus Aurelius's Meditations was his private journal, a tool for self-improvement. You can do this too. At the end of the day, take a few minutes and write. Don't just list what happened. Ask yourself, where was I disturbed by something outside of my control? What judgment caused that feeling? How could I see it differently next time? What did I do well today? This isn't about beating yourself up. It's a gentle, honest conversation with yourself to build self-awareness. Fifth, try voluntary discomfort. To build a muscle, you need resistance. To build character, it's the same idea. The Stoics practiced voluntary discomfort to strengthen their minds. This doesn't have to be extreme. It can be as simple as taking a cold shower, fasting for a meal, or sleeping on the floor for a night. The point is to teach yourself that you can handle more than you think. You learn that comfort is nice, but it isn't necessary for your happiness. By choosing small, controlled hardships, you become less afraid of the real ones life throws your way. These aren't quick fixes. They're a lifelong practice, but with them, you stop fighting a war with your emotions and start becoming their wise and compassionate master. That is the true Stoic path. The proof, the real Stoics. The best proof that Stoicism isn't about being an emotional zombie is found in the lives of the Stoics themselves. When you look at the big names, you don't see cold, detached hermits. You see people who were deeply involved in the world, people who loved, grieved, and fully participated in life. Take Marcus Aurelius. He was the most powerful man on earth, the emperor of Rome. Yet his private journal is the diary of a man wrestling with his own flaws, grieving his losses, and constantly pushing himself to be more patient and empathetic. He talks about the pain of losing friends and children and his frustration with the people around him. He wasn't a statue. He was a deeply feeling person using philosophy to manage his emotions and incredible responsibilities. Then there's Seneca. Far from being withdrawn, Seneca was a hugely wealthy playwright and a top political advisor to the Emperor Nero. His life was a storm of power, danger, and political games. His letters are filled with practical advice on friendship, managing anger, and dealing with grief. He was a man who tried to apply Stoic principles in the highest-stakes environment you can imagine. And the most compelling story of all might be Epictetus. He was born a slave. His master deliberately broke his leg, leaving him permanently disabled. He endured the absolute worst of humanity. And yet, after he gained his freedom, he became one of the most influential Stoic teachers ever. His lessons aren't dry lectures, they're passionate, direct, and often witty. He taught his students how to find freedom and happiness, not by ignoring suffering, but by focusing on what they could control, their own character, even when facing brutal oppression. These men, the emperor, the advisor, the slave, all prove the same thing. True Stoicism isn't about running from life to avoid pain. It's about engaging with life fully, with all its joys and sorrows, armed with a philosophy that helps you act with courage and calm, no matter what happens. They cared deeply about others and believed it was their duty to contribute to society. The lie of the cold, indifferent Stoic just falls apart when you look at the warm, engaged, and deeply human lives they actually lived. Conclusion. So, let's go back to where we started. That image of the stone-faced, emotionless Stoic. We can now see it for what it is, a myth, a lie that promises strength but only delivers suppression and loneliness. The real path of Stoicism isn't about being a rock, unfeeling and dead to the world. It's more like being a tree. A tree feels the storm. It bends and sways. It might even lose some leaves. It doesn't ignore the wind. But its roots, its principles, are dug so deep into the ground that it can't be broken. It stays standing, strong and alive, not despite the storm, but because it has learned how to live with it. True Stoic strength is not the absence of emotion, but the presence of wisdom. It's the freedom you get from knowing what you can and cannot control. It's the peace that comes from mastering your judgments, not burying your feelings. And it's the deep joy that comes from living a life of purpose and resilience. By letting go of this lie, you give yourself permission to be human. You can stop fighting your emotions and start learning from them. You can turn anxiety into action and fear into courage. This philosophy doesn't ask you to feel less. It asks you to think more clearly. It doesn't promise a life without pain. It offers a way to find meaning and calm even when pain is there. This is the real promise of Stoicism. Not a life free from feeling, but a life where you are no longer a slave to your feelings, a life of true mental strength and deep, unshakable happiness. If you want to keep busting myths and discovering practical philosophy for a better life, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. Thanks for watching.